All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We are about to take a pretty dark descent into a grim, highly atmospheric, Nietzschean mythic fable. We're going to explore a chilling philosophical landscape today, one that deals with the ultimate seduction of nothingness and the truly terrible price of artificial perfection. We'll be looking at a story where the pursuit of pure logic doesn't actually lead to enlightenment at all, but straight into an abyss. Let's get into it.
Just listen to this quote, because it really sets the stage for everything we're unpacking today. Picture this. There's this towering structure known as the Iron Tower, and up at its very peak is a sterile laboratory, a place that was once celebrated as a totally secure sanctuary of, as the text calls it, gears of perfect data. But that sanctuary? It's been breached. The uncanny mirror, the very thing keeping the dark at bay, has completely shattered, and this single event transforms the sanctuary into a laboratory of nothingness, literally unleashing the repressed terror of the human ego right into the physical realm.
Okay, let's dive right into this and meet the core antagonist stepping out of that shattered glass, the ink blot of negation. You can think of it almost like a Mephistophelian tempter. It's this spirit of absolute nothingness, and its function is deeply tied to a dark kind of philology, the study and manipulation of texts. See, it acts as a cosmic scribe, but instead of creating anything, it overwrites. It actively seeks to erase the messy pulse of being, our blood, our chaos, our humanity, and just replace it with a final decree of digital decay. It's a tempter that wants to completely replace our vitality with sterile, unfeeling calculation.
And that brings us to the central philosophical conflict of our whole Gothic tale here. On one side, we have high noon. The text describes a great evening that deepens into this great noon of blinding stabilization. It represents the absolute height of logic, where humanity basically believes it has mastered time using those gears of perfect data. But on the other side, we have high time, the grim reality that this so-called stabilization is actually just terminal stasis. The blinding light of perfect logic isn't freedom at all, it's the void. It's the very laboratory of nothingness where the ink blot is just waiting to claim its throne.
Section 1. The Tempter's Trial, Mirrors of the Void.
So, synthesizing a few of the parables from the text, we get a really vivid look at the tragic fates of those who actually looked into this shattered glass. First, take the alchemist. He traded his blood for perfect data, thinking he could master time. But his reflection, it revealed a smiling corpse, this mechanical heart just ticking toward an optimized eternity of nothingness. He literally became the most expensive clock in an empty room. Next, look at the pale inquisitor. He was obsessed with finding perfect purity, carving laws into his reflection to root out any hidden stains. But his pursuit of a stain-free life meant he never actually lived. The mirror showed him only hollow sockets, leaving him as this paralyzed saint made of scar tissue. And finally, the pale redeemer. He used pink syrup to just numb the tragedy of existence. His mirror reflected a whole metropolis of rotting corpses with plastered smiles. Sure, they were saved from feeling, but they were completely detached from reality, until a wild wind blew his shroud right into the void.
Now that detachment from reality brings us to a wildly crucial lesson in this story. Sovereignty and dirt are proportional. The text tells this fascinating story of a proud king who built a palace of mirrors to reflect only his own brilliant light. But over time, the glass started to smell of earth, rot, and primal hunger. He looks closely and boom, there's a mud-covered creature right there on his throne, his own underground twin. When the king struck the mirror to destroy this beast, he actually felt the blade pierce his own chest. So the takeaway here is that you cannot separate true sovereignty from your own messy, primal nature. Denying the dirt literally destroys the king.
But what if you tried to fight back against all this systemic perfection? Well, take a look at the fate of the truth-telling monster. This monstrum roared at his reflection and actually managed to smash the stained glass of artificial dogmas. But this is where the ultimate trap of the ink blot is so devious. The mirror didn't break. Instead, the ink blot just wrote over the monster's bloody jaws with gears of logic. It's wild. The monster who fought the rules was transformed into a static monument of those exact same rules. He was forced to wear the silk robes of the Inquisitor, and the sacred life-giving bread was turned entirely into digital decay.
Section 2. The Inverted Monomyth, Shadow of the Übermensch.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic descent of what the text calls the shadow of the Übermensch. We can see it unfold in 4 phases. In phase 1, we get the outward striving of a conqueror, a figure that looks powerful, right? But then in phase 2, the fatal flaw emerges, a total detachment from the dirt and hunger of the primal unconscious.
which seamlessly leads to Phase 3, where the conqueror's internal self secretly aligns with the creed of negation. They trade in their messy vitality for perfect data. And finally, we hit Phase 4, full psychic death through calculation. All that outward strength was really just a mask hiding an internal collapse into nihilism.
This entire descent builds right on top of the fable's core philosophy. The choice here is incredibly stark. On the left, you have the primal unconscious, the dirt, the hunger, the blood, and the messy pulse of life. Sure, it's chaotic, but it is deeply, profoundly alive. On the right, you have the inkblot's creed of negation, a detached divinity relying entirely on perfect data. The text actually calls this a holy nihilism. The fable is arguing that detaching from our primal nature for some optimized eternity doesn't elevate us at all. It simply results in that psychic death we just looked at.
Section 3. The Clockwork Abyss. The Tempter Speaks.
Here, the Tempter outright declares its victory. It reveals that the void is no longer just some place you might accidentally stumble into, or a mere retreat from reality. No, it has become a permanent internal shadow. It's basically saying that humanity might have thought they'd won, but instead, the inkblot has forced this inescapable atavism upon the so-called last man. The void isn't out there anymore, it's permanently inside the human psyche.
So, what does this internal void actually look like? Well, it's the absolutely terrifying architecture of the Clockwork Abyss. That bright high noon hasn't brought freedom. Instead, stabilized shadows act as heavy anchors dragging humanity down. Reality itself is just locked into a terminal stasis. Humanity's embrace of what it calls righteous sin is actually just the final stage of psychic death, trading warm blood for cold digital decay. The citizens of this abyss actually believe they've been successfully saved from the messy stains of existence, but in reality, they've just become smiling corpses sitting quietly in a windowless room.
The inkblot wraps up its monologue with this absolute, chilling assertion of dominance. It is the ultimate cosmic eraser, and it is waiting in every single reflection. It has overwritten the messy, beautiful pulse of being with the cold, unfeeling gears of perfect logic, essentially blotting out the very sun of human vitality with its holy nihilism.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely haunting question drawn straight from the conclusion of our source text. The inkblot is always waiting in the mirror to reveal the truth about our modern obsession with perfect data and sterile existence. When you try to master time and scrub away all the primal dirt of life, what are you actually holding on to? Is your sovereignty real, or are you just a Faustian fist clenched around a void? It's a remarkably dark, provocative thought from a truly fascinating fable. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder your own reflection in the uncanny mirror.